Most likely, you also don't have an evidence vault. So with NCIS, in a couple of the larger field offices, we had full-time evidence custodians. But in all the smaller offices, the agents were assigned. They were the evidence custodian or assistant for a year or 2 years. So I was evidence custodian in a couple of different offices. There's a lot that goes into it. A lot of rules and training. Your evidence vault has to be designed a certain way. It can't have any windows. It can't have a removable or drop down ceiling. So there can't be any access from anywhere but the door. The door has to be of a certain thickness. There has to be a certain type of combination lock plus keys and double entry. And in the vault itself, it has to be, you have to have a book, and there are even safes inside of safes to hold certain types of evidence, like weapons and money and drugs. And every time I opened the door, I had to document in the log when I opened it, when I shut it, every time I looked at a piece of evidence or someone checked a piece of evidence out, it had to be documented in the log. So very strict controls on evidence. And I was audited. Even with that, we would have time, once a year, we would go through every piece, look at it on the shelf, look at it in the book where it was documented, and compare, make sure that every single piece was there. You obviously can't do that. So you don't have those same rules. You don't have the same evidentiary standard. You don't have to comply to those rules, but you still need to understand and comply to the spirit of those requirements. Keep your evidence as safe as possible. If it's electronic evidence, keep things separated in files electronically. Don't mix. You shouldn't have evidence from different cases all in the same folder. If you have a software system, make sure they're uploaded properly to the proper place and labeled properly. If you have physical copies, you have the diary, or you have a phone, or you have some printed out picture copy, keep those separated and make them safe and secure as possible. So you probably don't have an actual safe, but if you have a cabinet in your office or a locked drawer, keep those there. If you're not in an office where you can shut and lock your door, do you have a space where you can? The more levels of locks, the better. So I had an office that locked and then a cabinet that locked. Well, custodial had access. They came into the office every morning. Just student employees who worked for custodial could unlock my door and to vacuum my carpet and empty my garbage. And they did it at 4 in the morning because for most offices, that is most convenient. You don't want to have that distraction in the day. In an office where you have evidence and FERPA private information, that's inconvenient because you can't watch them. And so just having it sitting on my desk in a locked office wasn't enough because students without the need to know had access to that. So I kept it in a locked cabinet as well, where I only had the key to that cabinet. And I took that key home with me. I didn't throw it in my desk drawer. That's like putting your password under your mouse pad. So I had 2 levels, locked office and locked cabinet. And then inside the cabinet, it was divided by case. I had a folder for each case and evidence was kept in the folder. You don't just throw everything in there. You want to keep your evidence separated and labeled so you can't be confused. If it's not obvious which case it belongs to, stick a label on it. Even though you don't have an evidence vault, you don't have those strict controls, you still need to be able to articulate how you maintain the evidence. You should be able to say, I kept this as safe as possible given the resources I had. I kept it in a locked cabinet in a locked office. Every night before I went home, I put everything back in the locked cabinet and ensured that it was locked. Maintain documentation. You need to make sure you document. If you received it electronically, they send it to you in email, then save the email so that you can go back and show how and when you received it. If they brought it in, if they handed it to you, make a note. When you received it, how you received it, who gave it to you. When you take your evidence out to look through it, to decide whether it's relevant, to ask the question, what does this prove? Document that. This is when I was looking through it, and these are my notes, this is what I saw. Keep track, and then keep track of it. So the video of the man in the red shirt running down the hallway, document how you got it from the university security department, and Officer Smith burned a copy onto DVD for you. Articulate that on this day. And when you come back, when you pop it in your computer to look at it, say, okay, on Tuesday, March 5th, I reviewed this evidence and I watched the video and this is what I saw. And then keep track. You can do it there or somewhere else, but keep track of what evidence corroborates which facts. That'll help you stay organized. So at the end, when you're looking at your investigative plan and you're saying, okay, I have all these facts that I needed to corroborate, you can actually tie which investigative steps go with which fact, which evidence goes with which fact. And then document what that says so that investigators, when you write your report, it's easy for the person reading it to understand how you reach your conclusion, because you are outlining the steps you took to corroborate every asserted fact and which evidence. So Exhibit 3, surveillance video footage of dorm hallway, attaches to this paragraph where you're talking about corroborating the man in the red shirt. And then decision maker, when you write out your finding, when you document your conclusion or your interpretation, you also need to refer back to the pieces of evidence that helped you make that decision, that for you corroborated the allegations. Go back, tie your conclusion to specific facts and specific pieces of evidence, not just a general, okay, I looked at all the evidence and it corroborates the allegation, so there's a finding. Actually explain, tie that back to specific puzzle pieces on where they fit. This puzzle piece was relevant because it's part of the tree in my puzzle and it fit next to the trunk, which explains, so tie those pieces together. When you're evaluating the evidence, use your evidentiary standard. Understand what it means and apply it equally. Don't apply a stricter standard to evidence. So if you have this expectation that you're going to have all this forensic scientific evidence, you're going to apply your standard much more strictly and harshly. Use the exact same standard to each individual piece as you use to the investigation or your finding as a whole. So apply that consistently across everything that you do.